Hi everyone, I'm Xander and welcome to my channel. Before I start with today's song, which is Stranger in Green, I would like to pay my respects to the WildWood people, to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and to any other elders who might be watching this. This is, was, and always will be Aboriginal land. Sovereignty was never ceded. This is stolen land. So today's song is Stranger in Green, and it was written in 2022 in May, and a culmination of ritual and wanting to connect with my spirituality. I'm a WildWood witch, and in the isolation that was COVID, where for people like me, the world shrank to pretty much just a room, and whoever you communicated with through things like online forums, online ways of communication, such as Zoom, such as Teams, FaceTime, telephone calls, texting, chats, forums, all of that kind of thing. There wasn't as much, there was very little face-to-face interaction. The world shrunk. But what I found was during that time, my spirituality expanded and filled that space. And it was my spiritual beings that I was finding that my connections were being maintained with. And I was finding that I was being held by my spirit kin, by those that I usually engaged with on a daily basis, multiple times a day, because I'm a spiritual person and everything for me is intertwined with my spirituality. And what I mean by ritual is that there's certain times of year where certain happenings are just more intense than others. And May is one of those times. It's one of those particular spaces of the year for those of us who mark the turning of the year with various celebrations or honorings of some description. And that intensity crystallized in me wanting to write something about WildWood, to write something that encompassed as much of my interaction with WildWood as I could. And to my surprise, the song that emerged, and it was a song, was a story, and it was a ballad, and it was very Pied Piper-esque. I've written another song for the Pied Piper, but this one was WildWood, but it was very Pied Piper-esque, and it kind of fitted and matched with so many aspects of my spirituality that it's still a song that I really treasure, and I'm surprised that it emerged. And it was one of these ones that emerged fairly solidly. It's a long song, and it just kept coming and coming. And it was written on a weekday, so I was trying to work around it coming through. And that kind of balance with trying to make sure that I was doing work tasks and then popping out and writing when another beat came, because it wasn't like I sat down and wrote the entire thing in one go. While it was written in one day, it wasn't necessarily written in one go. There were bits that came throughout the day as I went through the day. A large chunk at a morning tea break, some at lunchtime, so that by the end of the day, pretty much, I had a very solid song. And so this is what the song sounds like. On a faraway hill there once was a tree, as lonely and barren as that tree could be, till one day came a stranger, all dressed in green, and they were a weaver of the seen and unseen. They looked at the tree and its hidden desires that danced round that tree like green foxes of fire, sparkling like starlight in the blackest of skies, reminding that stranger of the light in his eyes. So the strangers stopped still and upturned their face, called to our weaver, the holder of faiths, and her answer came floating like feathers through air, to merge with that stranger, their skin, bones, and hair. They started to dance and they moved around slowly, taking such care, just like each step was holy, touching down gently like a stag in the wood, reminding that stranger of their man in green hood. From the base of that hill the stranger did dance, spiraling upwards between the three lands, and a sunrise came slowly to the edge of the sky. The stranger and tree came to meet eye to eye. Its branches rose up, each one backlit in crimson. Its trunk was etched deeply with lines holding wisdom, root-hugging earth gently as a bear holds her cub, reminding that stranger of her thorny heart's rub. As birds heralded daylight, the stranger did sing, voice echoing deeply like a silver bell's ring. Its ethereal grace embraced the tree like twin snakes dancing in divine revelry. The tree started to glow as if it was on fire, serpentine light flowing deeper and higher, till its heart burst with an orange-red flare, reminding that stranger of mystery's care. In the sun's full bright gates, the tree stood so tall, seeming to gather the one and the all. Then suddenly leaves ushered in life, followed by fruit red and ripe for the knife. The stranger they loved, and it echoed with lightning, crowning that tree with its crooked gold shining, drawing around it the old lore and good, reminding that stranger of the deep dark wildwood. On a faraway hill there once was a tree, as large and majestic as that tree could be, till one day came a stranger, all dressed in green, and they were a weaver of the seen and unseen. So there's a lot packed in the words of that particular song. It contains stuff about the sacred four. It contains information about the guardians of the Wildwood. It contains information about some of the aspects of lore of Wildwood. And all woven in this stranger in green and the tree. The tree is one of the central symbols and images of Wildwood, and it comes from one of the first pieces that anyone from Wildwood would learn, which begins, I won't do the whole thing, but and it wasn't written by me. I hasten to add it's older members of the Wildwood who did that. But it starts with deep beneath the shade and tower of our tree. And that's what I mean by it's pretty much right at the heart, this idea of this tree. Now, the tree being on a hill and the various light coming in was also, it touched on one of my earliest visions that I ever had, which was when I was in secondary school. Pretty sure I've mentioned it before, where I was in a train with my peers, and I was taking a time out because it was late, it was noisy, and I just needed to touch base with an inner calm. And I was transported to a particular tree on a hill, and there was another being there. Now, the being wasn't necessarily a stranger in green. They were a very specific being, which I think I have mentioned before, but if not, that being at the time was Jesus, because Jesus was one of the few deity figures that I knew at the time. And the figure was not actually Jesus. It was another being who was using Jesus's face in order to be able to make contact, that had a similar essence. I mean, I speak a lot about energies and energetics, and I speak a lot about deities having masks and many masks within masks, because the essence can be seen in so many different ways, depending on the lens it's being perceived through. And at that time, it was being perceived through a particular lens that had been taken from my mind as being the an entity that kind of fitted with its essence, that was something that I would know and recognize because it was trying to communicate. So yeah, so there was the stranger in green, the hill, and the tree are all from that particular first stirrings of me, that within me, that there was something more to life than I had experienced to that point. Up until that point, I hadn't really thought about anything like spirituality all that much. To be perfectly honest, all those sorts of religions were spoken about around me, that hadn't really touched my heart. And that was the first face-to-face confrontation, if you like, that there was something more to life than what I had experienced to that point. And it wasn't something I spoke about at the time. It wasn't like it came about out of that and went, oh my God, no. That's not what I did. I kept it to myself, because it's not the kind of thing you want to say in a train full of teenagers, especially those, if those teenagers aren't exactly close friends of yours to start with, So it's not something I mentioned at the time. I didn't mention it till, gosh, pretty much a decade or so later, when I was a bit more sure of where I stood with spirituality. I mean, spirituality is a journey. It's not something that it's like, bang, there it is, and you have it, and it's whole and complete. It's a journey. And this particular song is a journey. It's a ballad, but the stranger comes, there's the tree is barren, the tree is lonely, the tree is just sort of bereft of that spark of life that brings meaning, that brings fullness. And then all sorts of things happen in relation to the stranger and the tree. And you have the various guardians and sacred four to start with that come through, and then you have other energetic forces, which I'm not going to name, that are also woven in there before the end of the song. And ending with that particular lord that is the tree. And at the end of the song, you have the tree being very full. And it's majestic because it's full of life. And the stranger comes again. Because you have this cycle of life, death, rebirth, life, death, rebirth. And so while it's in its fullness, at some point it will shrink back to that lonely and barren tree on the hill, and then need to be filled with fullness. That kind of movement of life, the rhythms of life. Life isn't something that is fixed. I mean, there are lots of movement in life. That's what gives it its richness. So yet again, you can see certain aspects of nursery rhyme-esque in there. There are two repeated tunes that make the song flow. It doesn't have a chorus. It was one of the first songs I wrote that didn't have a set chorus. It wasn't, there just wasn't one. It wasn't something that I could shoehorn in there. It was a realization, this song doesn't have a chorus, so let's just throw that out. Because I was so used to writing something that had a chorus, or that had something that was a bridge. And so I thought, well, we can play with the two different tunes and repeat those. Which is a technique I've used in a bunch of my songs. One of these days I'll do this darkness, which uses a very similar kind of thing. It's very wordy. There are a lot of words packed in each of the verses of the ballad. That as well was something that was quite different. I mean, the full thing, when you sing it, goes for over 4 minutes. It's not a short song. And it's not something that you could potentially do easily in ritual. In ritual space, it occupies space, but you could do it on your own, working through it as a visualization exercise, as a way of tapping in with the essence of WildWood. And just either reading it, or because it doesn't have to be sung, you could equally read it as a poem if you really, really wanted to. Either reading it and chanting it, or singing it as a way of doing, with like candles and incense, if you like, to want to make a ritual out of it, that you could perform it as a way of tapping into WildWood and as a standalone ritual body in and of itself. Of course, you would need to do some other things around it for it to be a full thing, but it could be used in that way if you're doing something in personal space. So the end and the start and the end, I like these sorts of ideas where something starts and ends very similar. Unlike a lot of my other songs, it's not identical. There are, like I said, it starts with the tree being empty and lonely and barren, and finishes with the tree being majestic and full. So you have that progression there, which, but otherwise, there's a lot of similarity and touching base with the start of the song. So in many ways, therefore, it's like a serpentine song because you've got this particular trajectory. It's not full circle. It's moving on a circular motion and then it's moving in the other direction like a snake. It has a lot of, excuse me, color in this song. There's a whole bunch of numbers being repeated in the song. And as I've said on other occasions, numbers, colors are other ways of talking about energy, just like sound is a way of talking about energy, of moving energy, of invoking energy. So I quite liked it when I was by myself and being able to just sing the song and have WildWood wrap around me wherever I happen to be, whatever I happen to be doing, so that if I was working, I could hum or some such, and the WildWood would be fully around me while I was doing whatever else I happened to be doing. And during that whole several years of COVIDness, my spirituality pretty much was something that was with me and intensely around me at all times. And it was something I needed in that particular space. More so than, it's not like I don't need it as much now. That's not true. But it's something like when other things slip away and you find yourself with your own thoughts, and you realize how much spirituality is important in those particular moments. It's not that it's not important at other times. It's not that you're not thinking about it and actively engaged with it at other times, but it's in those particular moments that it really holds you. So that's generally the context of that particular piece. I don't think there's anything else that I can say about the piece. But I thought I would do that today as, I guess you could say, an introductory piece to WildWood, should such a piece be wanted. As per usual, in the description, you'll find a link to the my blog and page on my blog that the song is on, so you'll have the words there if you want. And yeah, I don't think there's anything else to say, so I'll finish here. Bye.